Copyright Overlord, Volume 5 KUGNEMAUMA. Translation by Emily Balistrieri. Cover art by So Bin. This book is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual events, locales, or persons, living or dead, is coincidental. 2014 KUGNEMAUMA. All rights reserved. First published in Japan in 2014 by KADOKAWA Corporation, ENTRBIN. English translation rights arranged with KADOKAWA Corporation, ENTRBIN, through Tuttle Mori Agency, Inc., Tokyo. English translation 2017 by Yen Press, LLC. Yen Press, LLC supports the right to free expression and the value of copyright. The purpose of copyright is to encourage writers and artists to produce the creative works that enrich our culture. The scanning, uploading, and distribution of this book without permission is a theft of the author's intellectual property. If you would like permission to use material from the book other than for review purposes, please contact the publisher. Thank you for your support of the author's rights. Yen on 1290 Avenue of the Americas, New York, NY 10104. Visit us at yenpress.com, Facebook, yenpress, Twitter, yenpress, yenpress, Tumblr, Instagram, yenpress. First Yen On edition, September 2017. Yen On is an imprint of Yen Press, LLC. The Yen On name and logo are trademarks of Yen Press, LLC. The publisher is not responsible for websites or their content that are not owned by the publisher. Library of Congress cataloging. In publication data names Maruyama, Kyugen, author. So Bin, illustrator. Balistrieri Emily, translator. Title Overlord. Kyugen Maruyama wrote it. So Bin provided the illustrations. Emily Balistrieri did the translation. Other titles B.R. Do. English description. First Yen On edition. New York, NY. Yen On, 2016. Identifiers LCCN 2,016,142. ISBN 9780316272247. Volume 1 hardback. ISBN 9780316363914. Volume 2 hardback. ISBN 9780316363938. Volume 3 hardback. ISBN 9780316397599. Volume 4 hardback. ISBN 9780316397612. Volume 5 hardback. Subjects LCSH alternate reality games fiction, internet games fiction, science fiction, BISAC fiction, science fiction, adventure. Classification LCC PL 873. A 37/023/13/2016. DDC 895. 63/6 DC 23. LC record available at http LCCN. Lock. Gov 2,016,142. ISBNs 978-031,639,761. 2 hardcover. 978-0-316-39,762. 9 ebook. E3 20,170,803. JVPC. Prologue. 1. Late fire moon, September, 2:15 p.m. He looked up. He saw dark clouds covering the sky since early morning. They began spitting a light rain as if unable to resist the urge any longer. Gaze of Stronov, the captain of the Royal Select, clicked his tongue at the hazy world before him. He would have been able to reach home without getting soaked a little earlier. He peered out across the sky, but couldn't see any breaks in the dark clouds, completely enveloping Ray Estes, the royal capital sharing a name with the wider Ray Estes kingdom. Even if he waited, it didn't seem like the rain would stop. He abandoned the idea of lingering inside the castle. He pulled his cloak's hood over his head and stepped into the rain. The guards at the gate knew him. He passed freely onto the city's main street. Normally this street would have been full of activity, but now there were hardly any people to be seen. Only a few were out, picking their paths carefully. They didn't want to slip and fall on the road. It looked almost black. It was so drenched. He figured the rain must have started some time ago from the lack of crowds. Then maybe it wouldn't have mattered if he had left earlier. As his cloak grew gradually heavier in the shower, he walked in silence, passing by a few people similarly outfitted with rain gear. His cloak was serving as a rain jacket for now, but when wet, the way it clung to his skin was uncomfortable. Gazef picked up his pace to hurry home. He was nearing his house and sighed with relief, knowing he would soon be free of his sopping wet cloak. Then suddenly, his attention was almost magnetically drawn down an alley to the right. In this thinly veiled world, a shabby-looking man sat letting the drizzle soak him. The wet hair plastered to the man's forehead, dripping raindrops, was a different color at the roots. Perhaps it was a half-hearted dye job. Since the man was looking down, Gazef couldn't make out his face. The reason Gazef's eyes had stopped on him wasn't because he wondered why the man had no weather-appropriate clothing and was steadily becoming drenched. Instead, he had the feeling something was off about this stranger, something inconsistent. The man's right hand in particular caught his attention. The weapon gripped there, tightly like a child holds their mother's hand, didn't match the grimy man at all. It was an extremely rare weapon, a katana. It was made in a city said to lie far to the south in a desert. Did he steal it? No, I don't get the feeling from him. He seems familiar somehow. Gazef felt a bizarre sensation, like he'd buttoned his shirt one hole off. The moment Gazef halted and saw the man's profile, memories came flooding back to him. Could it be Yuan Glaus? The minute he said it, the thought not a chance flashed across his mind. Brain Glaus was the man he once fought in the final match of the royal tournament. The image of the man he had such a close battle with was seared into his brain. He couldn't forget the face of the strongest warrior he dueled since picking up a sword, the one he still considered a rival, even if the feeling was one-sided. Yes, the man's hollow cheeks resembled his rival's face, but it couldn't be him. Certainly, his appearance was similar. Despite the changes that accompanied time's passage, his features were clearly recognizable. But the man Gazef remembered would never wear such a pathetic expression. He had been a man overflowing with confidence in his sword. He was enveloped in an intense, burning will to fight. He wasn't an old, wet dog like this one. Gazef approached the man, his footsteps splashing. Reacting to the noise, the man sluggishly raised his head. Gazef gasped. Seeing the man's face head-on confirmed it. He was Brain Glaus, the brilliant swordsman, but he had none of his former radiance. The Brain Gazef looked upon now had been completely broken, like a beaten animal. Brain staggered to his feet. His slow or perhaps listless movements were not those of a warrior, nor even an old soldier. He dropped his eyes and turned around without saying a word. Then he set off, dejectedly walking away. As that back receded into the rain, Gazef had the feeling they would never meet again if they parted like this. So he closed the distance and shouted, "Glaus, Brain Glaus." If the man said he was wrong, Gazef would tell himself it was a coincidental resemblance. But the very quiet voice that reached his ears did not contradict him. Stronov, there was no soul in that voice. Gazef never would have thought it was the same Brain he had clashed swords with. "What happened to you?" he asked in shock. What in the world could have happened to him? It is possible for anyone to ruin themselves. Gazef had known a few who had done it. When people always seek easier ways to live, one failure could cause them to lose everything. But he couldn't imagine that genius swordsman Brain Glaus having anything to do with those people. Was it because he didn't want to acknowledge that his greatest opponent had fallen so far? Their eyes met. What a face! Brain's cheeks were hollow and there were dark patches under his eyes. His eyes themselves contained no energy and his skin was pale. He looked almost like a corpse. No, a dead person would look better. Glaus was dead on his feet. Stronov, it's broken. What? The first thing Gazef glanced at when he heard those words was the katana in Brain's hand. But he realized that wasn't what the other man meant. It wasn't the sword that was broken, but tell me, are we strong? Gazef couldn't answer in the affirmative. What came to Gazef's mind was the incident at Khan. If the mysterious caster Aints Ulgaun hadn't come to his rescue, he and all his men would have died. That had been the extent of his strength, even if he was said to be the strongest in the kingdom. There was no way he could puff out his chest and say he was strong. How did Brain interpret that silence? He replied, "Weak, we ray weak. In the end, we ray only human. Our skills with swords are garbage. Humans, we belong to an inferior race." It was true that humans were feeble. The gap in physical strength between humans and dragons, the most powerful race, was obvious. Dragons had tough scales, sharp claws, wings that carried them into the sky, and breath that could annihilate anything. Humans had nothing comparable. That was precisely why warriors aspired to slay dragons. There was honor in overcoming that overwhelming gap with cultivated ability, comrades, and gear. It was a feat reserved for those so strong they could be called ultra-warriors. So had Brain failed to kill a dragon? Had he aimed too high to reach and thus lost his balance and fallen? I don't know. Doesn't every warrior know that humans are weak? No, he didn't understand why this was suddenly so upsetting to Brain. Everyone knew there were heights that couldn't be scaled. People sang his praises, calling him the strongest warrior, but Gazef himself wondered if he really deserved the title. For one thing, the theocracy was possibly hiding warriors stronger than him. Also, subhumans like ogres and giants had higher base physical strength than the human Gazef. If they acquired the same level of ability he had, or even a little lower, he probably wouldn't be able to win. The pinnacle was simply beyond sight. Gazef knew full well it still existed. Had Brain not understood something so basic, something that any warrior should know? There are heights to aspire to. That's why we train ourselves to win, right? Believing you'll get there someday. But Brain shook his head emphatically. His soaking wet hair flung drops of water everywhere. No, I don't mean that level, he cried in a pained voice. Gazef saw the man before him superimposed on his memory. Gazef felt the soul of Brain's attacks had been present in that shout, even if the declaration itself was antithetical. Stronov, the true peaks can be reached even with hard work. Humans can touch them, that's the true nature of peaks. In the end, we are nothing more than children with sticks. It's a continuation of the night games we used to play as kids. He turned to Gazef quietly with an emotionless face. Hey Stronov, you have confidence in your sword too, right? But that thing is garbage. You only take up that junk and feel like you're protecting people. You saw something beyond our grasp. I did, I learned. There's a peak that humans will never scale. No, Brain practically laughed at himself. What I saw wasn't even very high. I wasn't even capable of seeing the true summits. It was a game. Actually, it's a funny story, so if you train to be able to glimpse that peak, Brain's face twisted up with rage. You don't understand anything. No human could ever even approach that monster's ability. You can swing your sword infinite times, but you'll never reach it. What a joke. What was I even aiming for? Gazef couldn't respond. He'd seen people with wounded psyches like this before. These were people whose friends had died before their very eyes. Their spirits were simply broken. There was no way to save them. It couldn't come from outside. No matter how many people tried to help, if the fallen couldn't gather the resolve to stand up again, it was futile. Unglaus, Stronov. The power you can obtain with a sword is meaningless. In the face of true dominance, it's trash. There was nothing of his former bravery now. I am glad I was able to meet you at the end. Gazef watched with sorrowful eyes as Brain turned to go. He couldn't summon the energy to call after the receding, pitiful, worn-out figure who had once been his great rival. But Gazef couldn't miss the few brief words that Brain uttered as he left. Now I can die. Wait, Brain Unglaus. He cried out after him with burning emotion. He strode forward, grabbed the retreating man by the shoulders and yanked him back. There was none of the former brilliance in that stumbling figure. But though Gazef had pulled him using all his strength, though Brain's stance broke, Brain didn't fall because his body was well trained, and he possessed a supreme sense of balance. Gazef felt a little relieved recognizing that his one-time opponent hadn't gone weak. It wasn't too late. He couldn't let him die now. What are you doing? We're going to my house. Stop it. Don't try to save me. I want to die. I am tired of being scared. I don't want to jump at shadows, thinking someone's creeping up behind me. I don't want to face reality anymore. I don't want to think about how happy I was wielding a piece of crap. Listening to Brain's practically pleading voice irritated Gazef. Shut up and follow me. Although he instructed Brain to follow, Gazef seized Brain's arm before walking off. Brain stumbled along without any resistance. This disgusted Gazef in a way he couldn't put into words. You're going to get changed, eat, and go straight to bed. 26 Mid-Fire Moon, August 1:45 p.m. Rey Estais Kingdom's royal capital was the city of Rey Estais. The best way to describe the capital, home to 9 million people, was as the Old City. This wasn't just because of its history, but in other ways as well. The days plodded along, it was depressing and backward, and lacked change. A mere stroll down its streets was enough to understand. Many of the houses lining the streets were old and roughly made, completely lacking in dynamism and brilliance. But different people saw this in different ways. Some people probably saw the city as traditional and calm. Others found it boring and eternally stagnant. It seemed like the capital would continue to be as it always had, without change, even though nothing stays the same forever. The royal capital had many unpaved roads. As soon as it rained, the paths became muddy. The sight made it hard to believe this was inside the city. The kingdom wasn't necessarily underdeveloped, though. It was an error to compare it to the empire or theocracy. Since the roads weren't very wide, pedestrians bunched up along the side of the lanes. This made for a picture of squalor. The residents were used to it, so they weaved their way through. They approached one another head-on and deftly dodged at the last second. The road Sebas was walking down, however, differed from most places in the capital. It was a broad street nicely paved with cobblestones. A glance to either side showed why. The houses lining the street were large and splendid. One could practically smell the affluence. That was because this lively promenade was the capital's main boulevard. As Sebas walked in his dignified manner, most of the women in the street turned to watch him. They were charmed by the refinement of his middle-aged face. Some even stared directly at him with obvious passion, but Sebas paid them no mind. He kept his posture erect and his head forward as he strode on without a single step out of rhythm. He wouldn't stop until he reached his destination. At least, that was the impression his gait gave. But then he suddenly halted. After looking both ways for carriage traffic, he turned at a right angle to cut across the street. He headed toward an old woman. She set down a frame pack piled high with baggage and was rubbing her ankle beside it. What seems to be the matter? Perhaps surprised by the sudden question, the old woman had eyes filled with suspicion when she raised her head. The moment she saw Sebas's good looks and fine clothes, however, her expression softened. "You seem to be having some trouble. May I help you?" "And no, it's nothing I would trouble you with, sir." When Sebas grinned, the old woman's cheeks reddened. This charming gentleman's wonderful smile broke through her remaining defenses in an instant. She finished business at her stall for the day and was on the way home when she twisted an ankle, which was now giving her a hard time. This main avenue wasn't dangerous, but that didn't mean everyone present was a good citizen. If she asked the wrong person for help, they might steal all her goods and profits. She knew things like that actually happened, so she was hesitant to seek help indiscriminately. This was a simple matter. "I shall accompany you. Would you show me the way? Are you sure, sir?" "Of course, it's only natural to help someone in trouble." The woman thanked him repeatedly and he turned his back to her. "Now please get on." I could never." She sounded embarrassed. "My grimy clothes will soil your fine garments." But Sebas smiled kindly. What did dirty clothes matter? Such things needn't be taken into account when helping someone in trouble. Suddenly, the faces of his colleagues from the Great Tomb of Nazareth came to mind. Dubious looks, furrowed brows, and even open contempt. But no matter the feelings of Demiurge, who would probably be the first to react in such a fashion, Sebas believed this was the correct thing to do. It was right to help someone. She protested several times, but Sebas finally convinced her to climb aboard. Then he hoisted up her pack with one hand. The old woman and everyone else who saw him sighed in admiration as he steadily carried that apparently very heavy luggage. He set off according to his passenger's directions. Chapter 1, A Boy's Feelings. 12 Late Fire Moon, September 11:30 p.m. The man lit the lantern at his hip. He used a special type of oil. This created a blazing green light that bathed the area in an eerie glow. When he stepped outside, he felt a rush of heat. He made a face, but there was nothing he could do about the season. Every place in the kingdom was sweltering this time of year, even after the sun set. The year's hottest days were over, so it was supposed to be getting gradually colder, but there was no sign of that yet. "Arg, it's hot again tonight." "Sure is. I heard that it's a little cooler if you go up north or near the sea." His partner for the night responded to his griping. If it would rain, at least things would cool off a bit. He gazed up as he spoke, but the clear sky contained not a single cloud. It was the usual night sky spreading out above them. its stars appearing strangely large. Yeah, rain would be great. Well, shall we get to work? It wouldn't be quite right to call these two men typical villagers.